What's up, guys? Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz back again, this time with a brand new video series. So you can probably tell from the title, these are going to be quick, concise rundowns of how to play into sets in the English metagame in a competitive environment, so something like regionals. We'll go over all the cards that we think are important for you to know to make sure you don't get blindsided by a set that you might not have ever seen before, all in 10 minutes or less. That's our goal. While these aren't meant to be totally comprehensive, we've included a lot of information in all of these slides that we're going to run through. So feel free to pause and read up on it if you want to know more, because we're going to move pretty quick. In the interest of completeness, we're going to start all the way from the bottom of sets that were released in English and work our way to the top. So we're going to start with Disgaea. We're going to try to release these twice a week, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can catch them all as soon as they go up. With that intro out of the way, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, our Disgaea expert, and he's going to run you through this rush rundown.
So let's get started talking about Disgaea. Unfortunately, the set suffers from a condition known as being old, one of the first sets released in Weiss Schwarz. The only real strategy it has available to it is Soul Rush. It doesn't have very many viable playable finishers either. The only thing it can really do at level 3 is loop heals to keep itself alive. You don't have to be super worried about keeping track of your opponent trying to reverse you against Disgaea. The only card that you need to be worried about trying to reverse you is a level 0. Anything after that, you don't particularly have to worry about. So moving on to our first card of note here, this is the card that I was referring to a second ago. This Laharl is a level 0, sits at 2k. When it reverses its battle opponent on yours or the opponent's turn, it puts a demon character in your waiting room underneath it, and it gets steadily larger for each reverse it gets, gaining markers. This is Disgaea's primary level 0 game plan, as it can easily snowball out of control if the opponent can't remove it. It is, however, vulnerable to anti-change, since it does get a level per marker. Moving on to the next card here. We have arguably one of the best refreshes in the game. This is a 2-1 that on play, if you have 5 or fewer cards in your deck, you refresh yourself, all the cards in your waiting room return to deck, and your opponent burns you 1. So this is something to keep in mind. Disgaea has a free fresh with 5 or fewer cards in deck that also burns you, playing further into their aggressive 2-soul strategy. This thing, something to note, also can pop back into deck on reverse. Sometimes that's relevant, sometimes it's not, but that's something to keep track of. On to the next card here, we have one of the best finishers, quote unquote, in Disgaea, one of the only finishing effects that the decks play. This is a card that, if there are no other characters on your field, it sits at 20,000 power, 4 soul, and clock shoots anything it reverses on your turn or your opponent's turn. Oftentimes, this isn't relevant. Disgaea will have something on the board, but if you notice them, moving their back row up and swinging, oftentimes they'll be dropping this card pretty soon after. If you feel like something like this is coming, be aware, maybe try to avoid leaving reverse targets for the clock shoot. Our next card of note after that is Ding Dong Ditch's Axel. His effect allows you to pay 1 stock and sacrifice himself to free fresh your opponent, basically Fumio Jr. If your opponent notices that you are in a potentially, or could put you in a potentially risky deck state by shuffling your waiting room back into your deck. Maybe you're out a couple climaxes. That's something that Disgaea has the ability to do, and something that you, as a player playing against Disgaea, should be aware that they can do. The next card here is the level 3 that you'll see in literally every Disgaea deck. This is probably the best level 3 in the set. This card, on play, heals you 1 and can send himself to memory. I guess it compresses you. It's not usually that relevant, but it also salvages 2 angel or demon characters from waiting room, allowing it to loop into other copies of itself or other healers, keep the player alive as long as possible, since they don't have a very relevant finisher. The next card is probably the most dangerous card that Disgaea has in its arsenal, and probably the card that you should be most aware of playing against Disgaea. This card, the effect reads, perform the following action until you level up, put the top card of your deck into your clock. So the Disgaea player clocks themselves from the top of their deck until they level up, and then all the characters on your field get minus 3k until the end of the turn. Something to note in Weiss Schwarz, when a character hits 0 power, it is immediately sent to the waiting room. You are allowed to encore, but this is a relevant board clear that can both weaken the front row so that Disgaea's weaker power characters can hit over things, and also clear the back row. So definitely, if you aren't able to keep your brainstorm alive or whatever by paying 3 stock or whatnot to save it, try to hold an extra copy in your hand. Relevant counters in Disgaea. They have a 2500 power yellow counter. Oftentimes, you won't see yellow or blue in Disgaea decks. Most of them, if not all of them, are red and green. So the ones that you have to worry about here are this 3000 power counter that mills both players 3, and this 1500 power counter that is played as it is a bond target to one of the commonly played climax combos. So even if this card isn't played as a backup, it's sometimes fielded as an aggressive attacker just to get souls through, since unfortunately Disgaea doesn't have many other tools. Common builds that you'll see of Disgaea, they'll almost always run a 2-soul climax at level 1, if not 8 2-souls, with either a stock soul or a gate at the top. The gate climax combo is almost negligible. Disgaea runs it solely for the gate, for the plussing effect. The stock soul effect works off of a 2-soul attacker with Encore that burns on attack, which lends itself more to an aggressive game plan. All in all, overview of Disgaea. You can level lock Disgaea at 0. They don't have a Ricky, but any point after that, they can freely level themselves up to whatever level they like with Winged Slayer. You don't have to worry about being anti-changed against Disgaea. Oftentimes, they'll just be slamming 2 souls and hoping that something sticks in order to make something work. Whatever build you see, they'll definitely be running at least 4 2-souls in the deck, trying to finish you off as quick as possible, as its only strength is simply slamming those climaxes to kill you as quickly as possible and hoping that it catches its opponent off guard, since it can't do much else. As I said, unfortunately, the set suffers from being one of the first printed Weiss Schwarz sets, and the quality of the cards in the set definitely show that. But most of the time, you can probably bet that you won't be seeing this in some sort of competitive environment or regional. And that is basically it for Disgaea. If you like this video, be sure to drop a like or a comment and let us know how we did. That really helps us out. We'll be releasing more Rush Rundowns on Mondays and Wednesdays every single week, along with our usual deck techs on Fridays. Along with this video and these links that we leave at the end of all of our videos to the competitive Discords and Facebooks, we'll also be linking sample deck lists of the set in the description down below if you guys are looking for more in-depth content in this vein. But with that, I think we're done. Pittsburgh Weiss Schwarz signing off, and we'll see you all in the next video.